Now, some might say that this vlog, this video right here from Ras, Iodonis Tafari of the Lion of Judah, the Lion of the Tribe of Judah Society of His Majesty. Also, the Ark, the Apostles of Rastafari Knowledge is a long time in coming. It's a long time in coming. First of all, we'd like to heal up Abdiel Levi, Abdiel Levi, right? AKA Zion Lex. Just just got to hear, we heard the first part earlier in the morning. We had an appointment, so we caught a little bit of it. It's a video that he just live streamed and posted up there. It's about Dr. York and Pharaoh, young Pharaoh, I think, and Brother Polite, and it's concerning the book Sodom Misinterpreted, and he really goes in on this, and then we caught the second part of it a little later on. So first of all, we like to say Tawada, or Toda Rabba. Thank you very, 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 very much, yo, for bringing that forward. And you all need to check out the video, check it out. It's Dr. York, Brother Polite, Young Pharaoh on Kundalini. I think he's talking about the Kundalini. We also have to follow up on that as well. And he's speaking about the so-called the consciousness or the unconsciousness community, as he calls it, right? I call it semi-consciousness, because there's a semi-consciousness out there. Before it was just like some truths, intermixed with, maybe some errors or just lack of full truth. But now it's some full business is going on, especially in light of the so-called allegations concerning not my brother, but one's call him Brother Polite, and also on the young Pharaoh. I think it was very, very good how he brought that forward in that particular video, speaking of Brother Abdiel, his Hebrew name, aka otherwise known as Zion Lex. So just heal up on that right there. He really hit some really vital points. I recall there was a lecture, or maybe a debate going on some years ago. I don't remember exactly, but it was at least more than 5 or so years, between 5 and 10 years ago. And this particular debate was concerning, I forget the topic matter was concerning, but it was the one they call Brother Polite reasoning or debating Sarah Sudan Seti. And there's a point in that particular video. Some of y'all might know this particular video. I don't know if it's still out there. I don't know whether Sarnetta, in the so-called House of Consciousness, whether they removed it or whether it's still out there. But it should be still out there. Many ones probably, no doubt, have downloaded it. I'm not too sure if I downloaded it at the time. I might have. But anyway, at a particular point, I think either the one they call Brother Polite, he went forward to make his presentation, and then Sarah Sudan Seti came back to either rebut or then make his presentation. And then at a point of Sarah Sudan Seti's presentation, he brought up the book by the one known as Dwight, they call him Malachi Z. York. I think his so-called birth name is Dwight York. And there was a big, there's children in the room. Oh, you can't put that up there, because the book was called Sodom. It's called Sodom Misinterpreted. And I think it was a next book also that was some of the receipts or the exhibits that Sarah Sudan Seti was going to bring forward. And it was a big commotion and everything. Now, Zion Lex, in one of his more recent live and videos that's out there, went in. I think it's a part 2 where he shared a Tasha K and Young Pharaoh interview, where Young Pharaoh is testifying to some things that happened to him. You check out the video to get more of the detail. We're going to zoom in on how Malachi Z. York, aka Dwight York, or we knew him as, at least when he was known as Imaam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi. I don't know if some of you remember that particular I'm not going to call it no incarnation or whatever, but when the one that's known as Malachi Z. York was known as Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi of the Ansarullah. What was it, a Nubian? I think Nubian Islamic Hebrews was the other name. Nubian Islamic Hebrews from them days, back in the, well, I think in the 90s, around the 90s is when things kind of started to morph and change. And this is where we say that Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi, a.k.a. Malachi Z. York, also known as Dwight York, he ruined himself. And moreover, there is a cassette tape. I remember back in the days when they used to put out the parts of the lecture and the questions, the question and answers on cassette tape. So there's a cassette tape that we recall having heard back then. I'm trying to get the name of it. Something about the Messiah. The topic, the theme was something about the Messiah. I think it was a young sister, a young woman. She had asked something about, like, she said something like you're like the Messiah or something like that. She was looking at Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi as like the Messiah, you know, and he was very like humble. He was like, no, and you have to hear it for yourself. But what I recall him saying is that no, like almost like the burden is too great for him to bear, you know, to be, you know, the Messiah. And I thought it was interesting even back in the 90s when things started to morph and twist and turn and change and become strange, that at the time I recalled it was when he was calling himself like either Amon Ra, he was calling himself a god and all of this. And I said, wait, hold on for a moment. As Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi, as Imam Isa, he was saying being the Messiah was too great a burden to bear. You know what I mean? But then, a little after that, he started to say that he was a god. Well, this was by the time he went down to Eatonton, Georgia. The last time we had any words with Dr. York, well, not Dr. York, but he was between Imam Isa and I think he was between Dr. York, Imam Isa, and some of the other aliases, this other so-called, you know, aliases that he was utilizing was in Monticello. I don't know how many of y'all remember the whole Monticello, when they went up to Monticello, all right? And now with the Brother Polite, the rape allegations. I say allegations because it's still, you know, so-called being adjudicated. It's still going through the so-called courts and everything like that. There's a lot of other people who are, you know, speaking on it out on the so-called YouTube streets, you know, who are going into evidence, facts, reasoning, speculation, so forth and so on. So we're not going to even dabble in that, right? But the reason why we need to bring this forward is because of the book that he had wrote. Right? There's a book that he had wrote, or we say alleged to have written, but he's given the credit. He takes the credit for it, so therefore we assume that he did write it, even though it was like his wives and also some of the sisters in the communities that would do some of the research and help to, at best, augment some of the books. So I think that he actually, even back in the Imam Isa days, did put a lot of his own, you know, thoughts, reasoning, research, so forth and so on into the books, but they also probably researched certain things back then. Now you have to remember, this is before, you know, we had the computers. I think computers were out then. I remember the old Apple computers, so forth and so on, but it was not as popular like now. You know, social media, all that wasn't there then. But in his community, it was very, I'm talking about the Islamic community. When Dr. York, I see, we call him Dr. York nowadays. This is how he's been known. And I think this whole new generation that's coming up, and this new generation, the now generation, more know him as Dr. York because of the publicity and everything that has gone on. But we recall, like with, what's the brother's name? King Simon. King Simon, you remember King Simon? No, King Simon, yeah, King Simon. And hail up King Simon. I don't know if you remember Brooklyn College back in the 90s. We had him come up during one of the Black History Months, you know, even though it was mainly a I'm gonna say mainly a white campus, but like the white Jews and others, they were the ones who were, they had that campus, but we, the black students, we was causing a revolution at the campus. And one of the things that all the different black groups, we founded the first Ethiopic letter frat, the Ethiopic letter fraternity, as well as a sorority. The fraternity was the Lion of Judah, the LOJ, right? And at that time there was first, I guess, Kemetic, fraternity, Heru Neset Ra. I think it was called Heru Neset Ra. Something to that effect was their name and everything. But all the groups would get together. All the different black groups, the Caribbean Students Union, they would get together. Some of the other, like HBU, so-called kind of groups got together, and we would, join together to put on events and have speakers come to the college. And King Simon, he had some music, and he said that, he has testified that it was, Imam Isa. He also went on, I think it was the Taharka Bay, the Moorish World TV. Very interesting interview and everything that he had. I think about two of them we had caught more recently, since this whole, not my brother, but somebody's brother, Polite, since this whole incident has kind of hit the black semi-conscious, unconscious, pseudo-conscious community and has been talked about. But his testimony, King Simon's testimony, that was some beautiful, great music. We really liked that music, that time and that Imam Isa is the same one that we also knew of, so our first encounter, with the one who is now known as Malachi Z. York was during the Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi. Even my earthly father, God bless his soul, may he rest in grace, rise in glory. He took me over there when I was very young. Like, I think this must have been back in the, I don't know, for late 70s or maybe 80s, when Imam Isa was doing the Islamic thing. I'm just going to call it that for right now, when he was doing the Islamic thing. And I think this was one of the most legitimate phases of this whole Dr. Malachi Z. York thing, when he was doing that. I think he was more legitimate, more bona fide. There was more ones are able to testify, although there's all kind of testimonies, out there. But we agree with King Simon's testimony. He said after the Ansarullah community, the Ansar community, after the Nubian Islamic Hebrew community, after the Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi, community, and after that time, the Bushwick, we used to call it Bushwicked, but that wasn't because of just, Imam Isa. That's because of some other things too, if one's know about Brooklyn and back in those days and everything, because we grew up in the the projects over there, 50 Sty, 50 Stives in the Roosevelt, the Roosevelt projects. So those of you who remember them days and everything, so it's just like about no more than 3 blocks, right? Once you cross like the train tracks, the elevated, I think that what was that, the J line? Once you cross that train tracks, it's like a block. And as you begin to approach, Bushwick, you start to see the different houses like white and green and so forth. So they had a lot of real estate over there, so forth and so on. And they were more faithful to the teachings. Imam Isa, even to this very day, when I compare the things he put out then, when you see the books that was put out then, and then we look at this Dr. Malachi Z. York time and all the different permutation, twists and turns and all of this, ups and downs, follies, undercrowns that we see today, we have to ask, like, really, what happened? It's almost like you talk about a tale of two cities, a tale of multiple personality city. And what's up? But once again, let's just catch up with this. Some of my brothers say, like, reason, but let's not ramble on this, though we can, and maybe we should. But to the point right here, Imam Isa ruined himself. It becomes clear now. They say that hindsight, some people say hindsight, like when you reflect on something, you was in it, you was a part of it, or you experienced it, and then time has passed and different things have come out later on. They say hindsight is 2020. 2020. Think about it, 2021, right? But hindsight is 2020. And now in hindsight, we begin to more clearly recognize. We were seeing it then. Because going back to that same cassette tape that was put out, these Q&A tapes where they would take portions of their, I forgot what they call it, newcomers. I think they call it like newcomers class, if we're correct, newcomers class and everything. And various ones would come in there and ask questions. Even myself and a few others, occasionally had come in there and asked certain questions. We'll testify to that right there. We went up to Monticello, New York. That was like after the 1990s, because I don't know how many of you recall, there was the what's his name, Yusef Ramsey. There was the attempted bombing of the Twin Towers, but it failed, where they were supposed to park some type of truck that had like explosives next to some pillars of the Twin Towers in the basement, but it never really worked out. And then they arrested this guy. I think the guy's name was Yusef Ramsey, but then they had to release him because he was being kind of puppeted or being directed or handled by either the FBI or one of the other alphabet boys or whatever. And he must have recorded the interactions. So when they had him up in one of the feds, with the feds and one of their prisons or whatever like that, he must have let them know that, listen, I have recordings that I'm going to release out there where you're actually telling me where to park this van and so forth and so on. And I think they released him and maybe sent him back over to the Middle East. I don't know if he was Yemenis or whatnot like that. Some of you might recall that back in I think it was 1991 or 1992, roughly around that time. That's when a lot of things ostensibly, or at least on a certain level, began to change, right? They came out of the jalabiyas, the jalabas, the jalabiyas, the white robes and everything. The brothers that used to go around with the big bags, have the oils and the incense and the books, and be in the trains and be on certain corners, street corners or whatnot, propagating, proselytizing, and also, selling their wares. And some of the oils back in the days was really more quality. Some of the incest, I gotta say this correct, based on, they went from incense to incest. Anyway, we're just gonna focus on this right here. So they started to change after that failed bombing, because then they were saying they were trying to attribute it to some Muslim, Islamic, terrorism, whatever like that. And he was speaking to his community that we still are going to maintain the faith of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he was good with the Arabic and all of that. And we know this. How do we know this? Because our earthly father, an Arabic teacher, Arabiya Fusa, ones who understand Arabiya Fusa, that's that Quran, that Quranic Arabic. And so we got into some of Dr. York's books and writings, because when we started to, once again, I can say Arabic was one of our first languages before English, because of my earthly father. As we grew up, at a certain point, about to go into, kindergarten or some level like that, my mother, my earthly mother, she was concerned that I would not be able to speak to the other children, because I was only speaking Arabic all around the house, so forth and so on. This is what my father taught me. I still kind of recall certain things, listen to certain type of tunes. Oh, when I mentioned that my father took me over to the community, that was during one of the Eids. Some of you, if you know, the Eid is just like a witness. Actually, it means, it's a kind of a common word to even the Hebrew. But anyway, it's like dealing with Ramadan, after Ramadan, like a feast and everything after Ramadan, around that time and everything like that. He took me over there. And because my father, my earthly father, also kind of adopted, you could say, Islam and everything, all from even before the 70s. Some of y'all know my father wrote this book, the antiquity of the black race, which we had got a chance to republish. It's out there, I think on the Amazon as well. And it was the first part of it was published in Muhammad Speaks back in the 1970s. We got the receipts, the newspaper article from Muhammad Speaks way back there. So my father took me there because he thought, the community was, these are ones living the Islamic way, and I recall that. In fact, I even asked my father. I said, Dad, I said, didn't we go over there? And he was like, you remember that? He was surprised I had remembered that. It was only like one time we went over there and everything. One thing my father said, he said he never had a problem with Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi, because even Sheikh Dawood, State Street Mosque. So when I heard certain things and read certain things in Dr. York's books concerning Islam, and I call it like a higher Islam, right? A higher form of Islam. To me, it's a higher form of Islam than like something like the Nation of Islam on a certain level. As far as like the real teaching, getting into the Arabic, getting into the language, getting into, some of the truths that, even in the East, only some of the scholars really know. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, I'm mentioning this just trying to paint a picture right here. How did Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi, or Dr. York, how Dr. York ruined himself? He ruined himself exactly as he said in this newcomers class, and this particular tape that we probably still have. We got a lot of cassette tapes. Those of us who, remember back in the cassette tape days, all kind of stuff we have, lectures, reasoning, they used to be on the radio too. Some of you might remember they was on the radio. I think Farrakhan was on that same Nation of Islam was on the same radio here in New York, the New York area, because they used to, advertise, not only to advertise, they used to propagate or share Imam Isa. See, I try to, when I'm speaking about him in that phase, I'm trying to discipline myself to say Imam Isa, right? Because the Imam Isa phase, I think, was from all the 70s, sometime in the 70s, straight through roughly like the mid 90s. And then things became, proverbially speaking, in a black way, they became helter-skelter. In a black way, became helter-skelter. See, I can understand why a lot of these other people that be running around talking about Dr. York, Malachi Z. York, and the Wapian this and the Wapian that, I get where they're coming from, right? Because they don't know what some of us would say by comparison was the real Imam Isa. You know what I mean? And not that we agreed with him on everything. In fact, we remember when we started to, rise up, and our rising up, Rastafari, as I want to say, dealing with Rastafari. We recall he had Haile Selassie right there on his posters. Back in his books. He says, I'm speaking to everybody and the Rasta. You can go look at the books. Look at the old books. I'm talking about the Nubian Islamic Hebrew books. I'm not talking about the rewrites that the Nawapians do. I'm not talking about these rewrites. I'm talking about the old books. And it's hard to get those old books now. Some of us still even have some of those old books, or at least we have some photocopies, because sometimes other brothers would get the other books and we'll make photocopies of those books, if we couldn't find the other books, because they were like a limited printing, as they were distributed everywhere and everything. But he ruined himself. He said to the sister, back to the sister that had, we're looking for this tape right here. You know what I mean? But what we recall, and it's becoming clear now of all of this. Can we say fuckery? Can we say fuckery? For this fuckery. And we're going to it as an acronym: fornication under the crown of the king. All this uckery going on. It becomes clear. Didn't Imam Isa? See, because he repudiated all that. It came to a point in the mid-90s when he was going from Monticello down to Eatonton, Georgia, where he repudiated and he closed down a lot of mosques and everything, was trying to get some of the mosques. And some of the people that were following him under the Imam Isa and Nubian Islamic and Ansarullah days, you know, went with him in the Nawapi and stuff. But there were many others who said, no, what's up? No, they stuck with Islam, or they stuck with, you know, the more sincere form of Islam, the more legitimate form of Islam. If any form of Islam we recognize as being true to the truth of what Islam either was or is or can be, it's a Sudanese connection. Because, you know, we rep, right, the Israelites of Ethiopia. Let's say that, the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah. Right? So if any form of Islam, in fact, the Ahlul Bayt, right, and Imam Isa proved this, and we went and did our own research, and he was right and accurate that the real family of the real Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right, is the Sudanese people. If you want to know who the Muslims were and who the Ishmaelites were according to the ancient genetic type, look at the Sudanese. Even look at those in the Horn of Africa over there, the Somalians, right? They are more in the lineage of the Ishmaelites and the original Arab, the original Arab, to say the Ishmaelites. So they're family. If you understand, because they're black people. You understand what I'm saying? Because they're black people. They were run out of Arabia. See? And the one that helped to prove a lot of this to us was Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi. So after that 1990s attempted bombing of the World Trade Center and the Yusuf, I think, Ramsey kind of a thing, and when the so-called heat, I think Papa Bush was in office around that time. Me thinks, I don't want to say doctor right now, Imam Isa got scared. And he took the people out of the jalabiyas and what he said, like the sunnah of the prophets, you know, the real dress. Right, the real dress, you know, the white robes. Some of you remember the old days. He took them out of that, and guess what he put them in? Cowboy clothing. They started to wear cowboy hats, cowboy shirts. It was crazy. I mean, though the cowboy hats and the cowboy shirts, you know, black men, you know, the black man was the original cowboy. So, you know, I mean, we understand that. We know that history. Even before we kind of read a little about it in some of Imam Isa's and / Dr. York and all these other kind of pseudo aliases that he was using and everything. So we're not against that as clothing or saying that, you know, black man can't wear cowboy clothing, you know, and look fresh and look fly. But we was like, wait, what just went on? And then we heard one of his lectures or reasonings or khutbah or sermon or whatever. And he was saying that, yeah, we're going to change up because the pale red Arab is making things bad and so forth and so on. And we don't want to get caught up with like the pale red Arab that he was banging on. He was banging on those pseudo, you know, Muslims, you know, coming out of the so-called Middle East, you know, doing all that crazy stuff that's going on over there. You know, he was banging on them. He was exposing them. He was going into some real deep and accurate, if you cross-reference, because a lot of things we cross-reference. You know, because by that time, we was already like in Brooklyn College, where we started the first Ethiopic frat, the LOJ Line of Judah. You know, over here, USA, the mission, it began over there with the first Ethiopic letter frat, you know, at BC, at Brooklyn College and everything. So we cross-reference a lot of it. In fact, when we first started the club, it was an academic club, you know, on campus. And we would just get all kind of books, including including Imam Isa's books. You know, see, we have to retrain ourselves because there's been so much Dr. Malachi Z. York stuff that we forget, or ones don't remember Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi. In other words, they don't remember those days, right? And don't remember that there was a more progressive community right? Generally speaking, now I know ones might speak about things that were going on in the community. Some people might have good stories and bad stories, but a lot of people were, when he flipped the whole thing on everybody. But back to the young sister, I say young sister, but back to the sister, right, that asked the question. I don't know, it was just audio, so I don't know if she's young or old or whatever, but back to the, she sounded like a sister, so I take that she was a sister, that she was So back to what she said about that she saw Imam Isa as the Messiah, and he's like, you have to hear it for yourself. Any of y'all, some of y'all probably have that tape, you know exactly the tape, you know the name of the lecture, so forth and so on. Please share it. Right? Go to LOJS.org, hit the contact. If you have that audio, hit us up with that audio drop where she says that she saw him as the Messiah, and he's like the burden, like the burden of the cross or whatnot. Something like the burden of the cross is too much from him to bear. That's and he sounded very humble. He sounded very legitimate. I think there we heard his true voice. When I say true voice, not that was just his voice, but he was speaking the truth with his voice. And then he said something interesting. He said, if I ever go away, right, from Dinul Islam, Dinullah, right, Dinul Islam, like from the way, the judgment of Islam, the way of life of Islam. If you go away from Dinullah, if you go away from the way, the life, the judgment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you would know that something like has happened to him. He was almost telling us, I don't know what he knew at that time or what was going on, right, in his world, his life, more intimately, directly, threats or whatever. But he said clearly, if he ever goes away from, you could say the Ansarullah, if you go away from Islam, Dinullah, Dinul Islam, then it's like, he's like fake, he's fallen off. I was like, wow. Now, when I heard it then, I was like, wow, I mean, that's a very good proclamation, like I took that, like, yeah, I mean, but then later on, as we started to see these changes occur, these and not just changes. Change begets change. That's the teaching of Godamawi Negusin against Kadamawi Haile Selassie, I Godfather and King of Kings, Abino Melkeino. Yeah. But are they changes for the better? Even when he went from the Ansarullah, Nubian Islamic, he was for a brief stint, he was doing like an Ethiopian kind of like Hebrew thing. But I'm going to explain to you why he was doing that. I'm going to explain to you and show you receipts of why, exhibits of why that was going on. Right? So I wanted to say that at the outset right here. In Imam Isa, a.k.a. Malachi Z. York, the White Yorks, his own words. He says, if I ever go away from Dinullah, Dinul Islam, from what he was teaching and preaching under the banner, right, of the Ansarullah. And here's what's so very interesting, that now when we look over in the Middle East, so-called Middle East, and with like the like ISIS, what they call ISIS and ISIL, and the whole like the Bin Laden thing too was brewing back in those days and everything. I noticed that in some of the videos they have the same flag that he was telling us was the real flag of Islam. It's almost as though what Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi was teaching was not what they were doing then, but they picked up on, I'm saying them, like the pale red Arabs over in the so-called Middle East, over in that region of the world. It's almost like the radical, like Bin Laden and the ones they want to call like the terrorist groups and everything. They picked up on that. Are you following what I'm saying? It's almost like he was trying to school so-called us as black people over here about what the other half of the story of the truth concerning Islam was, and then people over there picked up on it. Then this terrorism thing started to happen back in the 1990s. It started to bubble up, and then it's like he took all the brothers and took everybody out of the garments put them in some cowboy stuff, went up to Monticello for a brief stint, did this kind of like Jewish Hebrew kind of a thing, threw that off, and then became a pharaoh or became a Egyptian god or whatnot, you know. I'm a newbie. I don't even want to try to, because I'm not trying to mock it, but I'm not gonna remember all that gibberish, because that's all it was, gibberish. Because the man himself said, if he ever go away from Deen Allah, Deen al-Islam, you know he has fallen off. That's what was shocking. What's shocking is that more ones don't recognize that. Because it's like the Eatonton, Georgia, building the pyramids and doing what he did that there was a 180. It's like he went 180, not a 360, but a 180. He did a 180. Right? But then we have to ask, well, was that just the reason of what was going on in the world? That was part of it. I want to show you the next part of it. I want to show you, right, what I not believe, but actually now, maybe I believed it before, but then I did research and get the facts, and now I know was the match, right? You know, that started the flame that burnt everything down. You know what that was? When he did this book, right? I call it one of the worst books he did, right? One of the worst research books that he did. One of the worst books he did. Whether on the Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi books. By comparison, if you read any of those books, what he said about certain things, you know, and then he said, oh, he learned Islam in a day, and Islam is like easy peasy, so forth. And I mean, it's like, are you the same person? Some of us was thinking, did they clone somebody else? I mean, you know, did they put somebody else in that position? You know what I mean? What happened? You know what happened? What happened to Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi, who said out of his own words, if he go away from what he was preaching and teaching then, you know what I mean? If he go away from that, because as far as many of us was concerned, right, though we might have not co-signed Islam the way, even though my earthly father was, you know, you could say Islamic, right, my mother being Christian, right, we didn't co-sign it, we still had a regard for what we could receive and understand to be the truth that was being proclaimed or taught. You know, we didn't have to, you know, jump all in, but we can hear the truth and know the truth. So let's go on right here, and let's bring in another exhibit. Now, a lot of these books right here, this one here, this is a rewritten book. We still have our old copy, you know, it's kind of like falling apart. We had to put some tape on it to keep it together, right? This is like a rewrite book, and you can see down here on this particular book right here, where he's no longer uses the title Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi, but here he uses some SGC, Dr. Malachi Z. York, 33rd degree, 720, the Sovereign Grand Commander of the Nubian Worldwide Masonic Lodges. Now, for some of us, it was a little bit shocking. Why was it shocking? All right, it was shocking because of what he had said previously and what he had taught previously. Right? This is this book right here. Right? What he had taught previously under this title. Right? Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi. Right? Let's go on right here. Okay. This is some of what his people who are so-called repping him, right, who his own daughter says are a bunch of frauds. It's like they've kind of taken over and continue to do everything. So from so I'm not too sure, like, you know, a lot of strange things are going on. Okay, this right here, right, okay, this is just some other exhibits. We'll return to this right here, right. Now this is interesting right here. You see right here where he has the Lion of Judah flag? You see where he has the Lion of Judah flag? This, he says, the Nubian flag of Rastafarians. Now, I guess you're trying to do a United Nations or something like that. Now, people say, well, what's wrong with that? Nothing's wrong with that except that when you take a stance, right, you take your first stance on what you say is truth, right, and many of us, right, can also recognize it's true, and then you go 180-degree opposite of what you say is truth. If you're teaching truth and then you do a 180, what is that? If I'm going forward and I do a 180, which way am I going now? If I'm going upward and do a 180, which direction am I going now? You get it? So here's where he tried to kind of like, you could say control like all the different mansions, so to speak. When it says, in my father's house there are many mansions, right? So I don't know if he was trying to be the father and he was trying to control the house, so forth and so on. And then he did all this kind of stuff, right? All this kind of like, I guess, his own brand of masonry right here. Here he's Malaki Zodok York L, Naya. Naya. Now this is interesting because, Naya, yes, Aya, Naya. This is kind of like a little bit of some of the Rastafarian, the Rastafari kind of thing. Some of you might not perceive it because maybe your knowledge is not that deep on it. But let's go on, right? How many of you remember this one right here? Now, this one looks like one that we had redid. We had redid this because we did like the idea, the concept, conceptually speaking. Looking at a lot of our, great leaders, right? And if you notice, he's the one who put Haile Selassie right there in that. Just as he did the little old posters under the Ansarullah, there was one like we're proud Nubians. There was a Proud Nubians poster. Any of you got that? Any of you seen that? The Proud Nubian posters? Right there, I think in the center of the Proud Nubian posters is Haile Selassie, right? In his books, he says, and he's also the Rasta, like he's calling to all the different, groups of our people and the Rasta. So, many of us coming into Rastafari, we read and, we were somewhat interested in what he had to say. And then looking at his posters, he put Haile Selassie there. He put Haile Selassie in the center of the poster. He put Haile Selassie in this kind of like, I guess it was a Last Supper picture, right? Now, here, this is another one of the many faces, right? The many faces. It said, so they did this book here, and it says, does Dr. Malachi York try to hide the fact that he was, these are all the different, you could say, the different faces, right? The different faces, right? Okay, let's go on right here. Boom, here we go right here. This is the book. This is the book that he did, and we're gonna have to get into, breaking this down and going like page by page. We knew about this book before because we had wrote him, right? The Line of Judah, LOJS had wrote him, right? And said, well, we'll find the actual documentation and everything, but the basic point of what we said is that, we agree with some of the things that you're saying. We agree with many of the things you're saying. We didn't agree with all the things, and we were saying that how we could work together, because we noticed that he was representing like Sudan, right? And from the whole Sudanese, Muslim, Islamic, if you understand their history, the history of the Sudanese people, or at least the Sudanese Muslim, Islamic people, you can recognize that they are the actual descendants and the family of the Prophet Muhammad, right? This is one reason why you hear some people say that, the Sudanese Muslims, like they're Africans, and they would say, no, we are Arabs. They would say you're Hamitic, and they'll say, no, we are Semitic, because the Sudanese family, the Mahdi and the Sudanese family over there, they are like, we could say like the conquering line, the tribe of Judah, and the Davidic, Solomonic peoples of Ethiopia, they are Shemitic. They are of Shem. This whole Ham, Shem, and Japheth thing is a kind of a white supremacist rhetoric. It's a mind-uck. We touched on that before, but not to get too deep in that right here. So boom. So right here, this is some of the pages in this particular, book that he did. He did this book as a response to the Lion of Judah Society, as a response to Ras, Adonis, Tafari, and I brothers and sisters who had made overtures to him, because we said, listen, Sudan is there, Ethiopia is here, and look at us over here in the West. You know, you are there, we are here. How can we work together, you know, for our people? And then he sent to us, and we have this, we showed this in an earlier vid that we had posted on the YouTube maybe more than 10 years ago. We either have to repost that particular video, or we can, you know, just get the documents where he mailed us in like one of the kind of like a manila kind of envelope, a couple of excerpts, like a printout, right, of the book. It was almost like a threat, you know, like we're gonna drop this on you, you know, like almost like trying to say, yo, we better stop what we're doing, right, or he's gonna drop this book on us. You know what I mean? And then look, after that, we went up to Monticello, New York. Right? We testified about it, so we even have documentation, and we've testified about it, and others also that was with us testified about this right here. Now here, what's page 1? We're gonna have to get to page 1, right? Right. So the question, you know, now we're gonna go through this page by page to show that all the errors, right? The errors. So this is Haile Selassie the Christ book of Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi / Dr. Malachi Z. York / Dr. York, was written to respond to us, right? Because what he felt is that we were distributing our information among his people, and he felt threatened by what we was putting forward. So therefore, he wanted to so-called get ahead of it by putting out this book, you know, and think like he could dead it by putting out this particular book. But then as we went through this particular book and we started to read the book, we were shocked that from all the other books that we had read that he had put out that seemed to be accurate in many ways and well researched, this one here was one of the worst research and most inaccurate books that we have ever seen from so-called Dr. York. You know, like we said, we're going to go through this page by page, right? He goes into these questions. Question just, who was Haile Selassie? Then he says Haile. Well, if you know anything, by saying Haile, you're saying the power of. You're saying the power of. He said received the Western education at a French Catholic mission in Harare. You know, this is only a fraction of the real story. This is only a fraction of the story, right? Fraction of the story. See, Haile Selassie, the name Haile Selassie is Rastafari's baptismal name, right? Which was his throne name, the power of the Trinity. The first one on the throne of David with the name Haile Selassie. Not the first with the name Haile Selassie, seeing as a baptismal name, but the first to sit on the throne of great King David. So he really should have said Tafari. Well, he was born, you know, Tafari, so forth and so on, you know. So it showed me that whoever researched, I'm not even too sure if he really researched this book or whether it was the woman, the wives, or others who did the research, and then he would kind of like, you know, I guess do a review of it and say, okay, this is good, put it out, print it out. This question, the next question, wasn't Haile. Now, even when he goes into this Haile, this is, first of all, that's not the name. Right? It's Haile Selassie. Haile means power. You know, it's like somebody, his name is Abdullah. And then I'm talking about them and I say Abdul. Because anybody who understands what the name in Arabic Abdul means, it means a servant of. You know what I mean? So if the person's name is Abdullah and I say Abdul, you know what I mean? I'm like saying the servant of what? Like there's a question mark. It's an incomplete. It's an incomplete name it's an incomplete, you could say, characterization. But he goes on to say, wasn't Haile born in Jerusalem, which is one of the reasons why it is believed that he is Jesus Christ? See, here he's being, you could say, sarcastic, trying to be funny, trying to be ironic, trying to be stupid. What other way can we say it? He says Haile Selassie was born in Harar province, Ethiopia, not, and you can see there it's in bold, not in Jerusalem. I repeat, he was born. He did not come down as Jesus went up. So here he's using the ignorance of counterfeit Christians, Western Gentile, WASP, Romanist Christians, right? He goes on to say, well, okay, this is the first page. Okay, because what we did is we kind of saved every pay, every pick, so we can go through this. So this is actually the first page right here. Is Haile Selassie the Christ? And if you notice, he has this kind of a Trinity symbol. Did you peep that? He has his kind of makeup Trinity symbol. What this symbol really is, it is a distortion of Haile Selassie's symbol, which later on was stolen by the Benz Daimler Corporation, aka Mercedes-Benz Corporation. That's why Haile Selassie didn't have to pay for any of the Mercedes-Benz, right? Because they were given, because they know what they done did. They stole, right, one of the ancient Trinity symbols from, right, Ethiopia and from Haile Selassie. But here it goes right here. Here's the introduction page. Introduction. This scroll was written for those misguided and confused souls. Now, when you see the letter the communication that we sent him, and now we read this right here, let's continue. Who are trying to support Haile Selassie by making him seem like some kind of god or deity. Dr. York, you was Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi, right? You then threw all of that off, repudiated, right, your lineage, your father, all of that, your roots, which you were so passionate about. This is who you are and this is what it is. And then you made yourself some Egyptian god, right, which in your Imam Isa days, you said it was all folly, but then you go ahead and do the same fuckery. Okay, let's go on. In most cases, he's referred to as Haile Selassie I, elect of Yah, King of Zion, Negusa Neges, King of Kings, Lord of Lords, the conquering Lion of the tribe of Judah, His Imperial Majesty, H.I.M., Light of the World, King of Israel, Defender of the Faith, and Earth's rightful ruler. No, Dr. York, it's not that he just referred to, but when he was coronated and anointed on November 2nd, right, from the ancient priesthood and order that descends from the Levitical, these are the titles, right, that he was anointed, right, as the anointed Christ. Christ means anointed. Messiah is the anointed, right? Let's go on. He says here's how he lies. He says, these titles were given to him by his followers. You're a liar. Dr. Malachi Z. York, you are a liar. Now notice when he wrote this, when this is allegedly written, for the Holy Tabernacle Ministry in 1994. So that now gives us the approximate time when he had flip-flopped from the Imam Isa, the Deen Allah, the Deen al-Islam, to all these other permutations, all these other schizophrenias. But let's go on. He now says that these are titles that the followers, speaking of Rastafari and so-called Rastafarian, we say so-called, we call ourselves Rastafari, because the first Rastafari is Rastafari, Kedamawi Haile Selassie, Rastafari Haile Selassie the first. But here he's saying that these titles were given to His Majesty by us. No. These titles were the titles of the tribe of Judah, the ruling tribe of Judah, and these titles were appropriate for he who is that one to sit on that throne of David, Haile Selassie the first. All right, but these titles were not given by the followers as to say the Rastas or the Rastafarians or I the Rastafari. But he goes on to say who apparently don't know the history of their leader. No, people really don't know the history of you, Dr. York, because many have seemed to have forgotten, even as King Simon said, I don't know nothing about that Nawabian stuff. All he knew about was Ansarullah, Nubian Islamic Hebrews, right? And there's a lot of other ones who can testify to that was what they knew of, right? But as soon as he started to go into these other things, they were off. They went in other directions. Maybe they recall what Dr. York or what Imam Isa had said to that woman who thought he was a Messiah. And he said he can't be the Messiah. Like he says, I'm not the Messiah because it's like a burden. Like it's too much for that. He can't be and all this and that. Now, he goes on to say, they use scriptural quotes and apply them to him like the King of Kings found in Revelation 5:5. Well, in Revelation 5:5, it speaks about the conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, right? The King of Kings. Who else you know is anointed by a priesthood that can trace its lineage to the priesthood of Israel? Who else you know? We can wait. You know, how long we got to wait for you to tell us who? Okay, let's go on. Revelation 17:14, Revelation 19:16, which has absolutely nothing to do with Haile Selassie. Says who? Says the one who has proven himself to be a liar to what he has professed to be true to us. In other words, Imam Isa going to this Malachi Z. York persona repudiated everything that he taught was true. He repudiated, so the liar is Dr. Malachi Z. York. But let's go on. In each of these quotes, it is clearly referring to the Messiah Jesus, whose ancient Sumerian... Okay, let's pause right here. Here's where he gets into all this Sumerian stuff. You know? And if you actually go through it step by step, you can see the psychosis. Right? You can see the cognitive dissonance of Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi, because we think that was the true man. All this other stuff is the fake man. That man would never probably get caught up in all this pedophilia, but some people say that a lot of things were going on. I cannot vouch for the community. We was not in the community, right? But none of these kind of things were ever uttered, you know, or ever even alleged to be, right? There was accusations, but they were all of a kind of denomination. Other Muslims were saying, well, he's not the right Muslim because other Muslims were defending like the white and the pale red Arab. And he was coming with something that was black, right? And connecting with black Muslims and black, you could say, Ishmaelites, you know, like the Sudanese family that he alleged and claimed that he was a member of. He goes on to say that Messiah Jesus, whose ancient Sumerian title is Tammuz. See, we can pause here and we can then go to the Bible. You see what he says right here? Let's zoom in right here. So he's saying that the followers of Haile Selassie attribute to Haile Selassie the titles like King of Kings, right, conquering lion of the tribe of Judah, because of those biblical verses. And then Dr. York is saying, well, the Messiah Jesus, his ancient Sumerian name, what? I mean, let's just stop. The Messiah Jesus. Why don't you say the Messiah Yeshua? You see how he's mixing in, you know, Christ Jesus, whose ancient Sumerian name is Tammuz. Let us go right here, and this is kind of like the flip flop that he's been doing and everything, right? Let's go to Tammuz. Can we find Tammuz in the Bible? I mean, he already repudiated the Bible, and Abdiel. Zion Lex already went into that in Sodom Misinterpreted, right? Weeping for, right? Where does it go right here? Is it right there? There we go, right there. Yeah. Ezekiel 8:14. Then he brought me to the door of the gate of the Lord's house, which was toward the north, and behold, there sat woman weeping for Tammuz. So you can see the mix-up right here. So here he's going to Ezekiel, and he's saying, well, this right here refers to Yeshua or to Jesus. Then said he to me, hast thou seen this, O son of man? Turn thee yet again, and thou shalt see greater abominations than these. Are you following this? All right. So not only is he lying is Haile Selassie the Christ lying on Haile Selassie, but he's also lying on the Messiah Jesus. He's lying on the Messiah Jesus. So what he's saying that the Messiah Jesus is what, abomination? Or that they were weeping for Tammuz because they were actually weeping for Jesus? Where do you have that? Where did that happen? Where? You know, Judah's in the south. And Jerusalem is in the south, right? You know, of that particular land and region. Not the north. Galilee's in the north. So, you see what it says right here? Toward the north. And there sat woman weeping for Tammuz. So now, he's saying here in his attempted hit job against the LOJS Society and RastafariJews, right? He's saying right here that actually Jesus is Tammuz. That sounds like some kooky stuff that, you know, some other pseudos out there, like a lot of white pseudos and others who kind of, like he's kind of borrowing a lot of the rhetoric that others, you know, have said. But then going on, whose galactical, his galactical name. His galactical name. Can you show me galactical or galaxy in the Bible? And then when you show me the word galaxy, show me the word universe. Is a universe a galaxy? Then show me the word solar system. But he says whose galactical name is Sananda. Now see, these are all titles that he has attributed to himself. Referred to, is Jesus God? Scroll number 120. Or who is God? Scroll number 103. They would know this if they began reading from the first verse of the chapter and see a title in one of the verses that sounds good, like King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So he begins off his book, is Haile Selassie the Christ, based on his ignorance and his false premises. You have to understand that. He begins off. In other words, he sets up the argument, right? He's not going into what we actually said. He could have quoted what we wrote to him, what we shared with him, right? But he begins off on his own false premise, and then he begins to argue against that false premise, right? So a verse that sounds good, like King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and use it out of context. Dr. York, you became out of context once you went away from the Ansarullah, once you went away from all that you had built, and you started flip-flopping all these other identities, right? Stolen identities, or at least false identities. You began to do the very same thing that you claim here. Use it out of context. If they knew how to speak the Greek language, which they are quoting from, how do you know that they, since you're speaking about we, don't know how to speak the Greek language? They would overstand. Oh, you see that right there? You see the word overstand? So he began to bite Rastafari phraseology. I know a lot of people use overstand now, overstand, but you must understand that overstand is Rastafari phraseology. The first ones, one of the first ones to use overstand and overstanding consistently is the Rastafari. So he was stealing from us. People, he was stealing from us. But how many of them pick up on this? They make it seem like there's a lot of cats out there that will make you think that, oh, it's Dr. York that started the overstanding thing. No, it's all stolen goods, y'all. And wouldn't make such claims if you overstood that Dr. York was stealing. He was stealing from ones, and this is what my earthly father told me. It's like he tried to big himself up and bring everybody else down. Right? He's taking from everybody else and he's trying to then bring them down. He's taking their stuff, right? And then saying he knows their stuff better than they do. And he wouldn't make such false claims. And they have no proof or facts to back up these claims. Oh, really? They use these quotes as an excuse to exalt Haile Selassie as if he were Jesus Christ himself. Let's go on. They've given him many titles. See, again, he lies. See, because a lot of ones, we have this book right here in front of us. It's called the Coronation It's the actual program, the order of the coronation. In the Ethiopic, it's called the Sarate Nigis. Sarate Nix. Nigis. Sarate Nigis. Right? Which is the order of kinging. Right? It's the order of the coronation. And if we go through this document, which a very good translation, we have the Amharic as well as the English, right, presented by the Tafari, right, this particular group of brothers, and Ras Irit did a very good translation here, right. We would understand that it's not I and I, it's not the Rastafari that have given him these titles. Stop those lies. And brothers and sisters, when you come across those, say, oh, you're giving Haile Selassie, y'all give him these titles. Tell them you're a liar. You're a liar. We didn't give him these titles, right? When he was coronated and anointed, when he was anointed he was anointed with those titles in 1930. Right, which is before most of us, I was born. So it's not us giving him those titles. Right? You know who has given himself a bunch of titles? Dr. York. Dr. York. Malachi Z. York has given himself many titles. Where did he get those titles from? Who gave him those? He gave himself those titles. And his followers gave him those titles. We didn't have to give Kadamawi Haile Selassie these titles. He was already anointed. This is why we call him Christ. Because Christ means anointed. Don't be stupid. Don't be foolish. It means anointed. And anointed according to a certain ancient Israelite order. Boom. But let's go on. They've given him many titles which do not apply to him in any form or fashion. You're a liar, Malachi Z. York. Is that your name? Haile Selassie was just another typical Christian man. As though, see, he's saying this because he's speaking to black people who have been traumatized by white Anglo-Saxon Protestant WASP Christianity. So here he's trying to make you believe, you're trying to get away from white man's Christianity, and here's Haile Selassie, just another white man Christian. They don't know anything about the real church. Before, right, Roman Christianity, they don't know about Christianity before, right, Romanist Christianity, Romanism, whitewash Romanism, should we say. They don't know anything about Christ or Christian or Christianity before Protestantism. And see, we as black people have to, if we haven't studied these things, we have to be honest that there is a whole other side. In fact, most of the early Christians or people who followed Christ were black people before the white people hijacked it and took it over and whitewashed it. That's the truth of the matter. That's the half of the story that's not told. All right. Then he goes to this right here. Let's go to this. Was Selassie the king of Ethiopia? He answers and says yes. Is that correct? No, he's the king of kings. Why? Because in ancient Ethiopia, what we call Ethiopia, even from ancient time, there were many different countries. There were many different, they might call them provinces. Each province, different tribes that were not Israelite tribes, but the ruling tribe was the tribe of Judah, right? Representing that ancient covenant of King David, right? And King Solomon. Let's go on. He says here was Selassie. So you see how they play around? In one question was Haile, and the next question was Selassie. Why don't they just ask the question, was Haile Selassie the king of Ethiopia? The answer would be really no, if we're going to be right and accurate. He was the king of kings. He was the king of the kings of Ethiopia. That means not just the king, he was the king of Israel, right? And he be, but the king of Israel, right? But the king of kings, the king of the kings of Ethiopia, that means all other tribes, whether they are Hamitic tribes, whether they are Shemitic tribes, whether they are Hamo, Shemitic tribes, he was their king. Let's go on. He goes on to say, yes, he was the emperor of Ethiopia. No, he was the king of kings. So you'll notice how he very craftily manipulates the narrative right here. Because if he were to answer the questions straight, ask the question straight, and answer the question straight, it's like that book, Sodom Misinterpreted. You can see what he's up to. If you don't see what he's up to, then check out Zion Lex's video, right, about Dr. York, Brother Polite, Young Pharaoh, Sodom Misinterpreted book, right? Let's go on. But that's all he was. See, and if you get through this book right here, you'll find out that the real reason that Dr. York hated on Haile Selassie because of this alleged allegation that Haile Selassie killed his father. Dr. York claims that Haile Selassie killed his father. That's the fact. That's the fact of the matter. So all this hate, all this kind of twisting up of the facts and everything, is all because he claims Haile Selassie killed his father. Let's go on. But that's all he was. He was not a worldwide influence. Haile Selassie was not a worldwide influence. See, in his other book he did back under the Imaam Isa title, he did this book about Marcus Garvey. Some of y'all probably might have seen that book. And in that book he says that Haile Selassie never acknowledged the Rastafarians, never acknowledged them. You know? He says that Haile Selassie never went to Jamaica. He says a lot of things back in the 90s and everything that, we didn't have internet. We can just Google it. You know what I mean? That we later on found out, wait, you're a liar. You're a liar. You know what I mean? He did acknowledge the Rastafari. Did speak to us directly. He did even go to Jamaica. He even says in this book, how come Haile Selassie didn't go to Jerusalem or Israel? He did go to Jerusalem. I'm talking about the time of the fascist invasion, the Romanist invasion. I mean, this is some overt facts. We're not going to go through all the little details. Like we're here to so-called correct his book. We're here to expose the book as a scroll of folly. As a scroll of folly. Imam Isa, a.k.a. Dr. Malachi Z. York, Dr. York ruined himself. Right? Because he went against his own word. He did not keep his word. And he said to everyone that if he goes away from Islam, then you know that he has fallen off like it's not him. Somebody has taken him over. It was crazy the way he said that, especially in light of what he has done and what has happened. He goes on and says, he was not a spiritual influence. What? He was not a spiritual influence? He's speaking to people who are either as foolish or more foolish than him. Or at least he's speaking to people who he wants to believe is foolish. But not all of us are that foolish. He was not a Messiah or the Son of Yahweh, which has been mistranslated to mean the Son of God. He was also not a religious man. Thus, he wasn't a religious influence. Do you see this right here? So then, how is it that they say, well, Rastafarians worship him as a god, and Rastafarians, Rastafari, or they'll say Rastafarianism is a religion? You know what I'm saying? I mean, even for the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, over here in the Western Hemisphere, there's many black people who gave up white man's so-called Christianity, right, and became members of his church. Now, the true church and the professing church is different than the outer Ethiopian Orthodox Church. That's a whole other reasoning there. But he goes on to say, however, he was known to be a tyrant and a betrayer. If you read his history, you would see he was an ordinary lawyer. Wait. Haile Selassie was a lawyer and a strategist? Word? A tyrant and a betrayer? Dr. York, you don't like him because you believe Haile Selassie killed your father. He should have started out with that. He should have started the book out with that. These Rastafarians wrote to me and they want to work together. I ain't going to work with them, with Haile Selassie. So notice something. All that he's saying about Haile Selassie, yet, if you look at the Proud Nubian poster, even what we showed you right here, from that other poster, which was a kind of a later thing after he already got into the Nuwapian thing, he still had Haile Selassie. what's going on up here? What is going on? Right? And since you, because before he published this book, he wrote us and gave us selected excerpts, some pages from the book, right? With a kind of a passive aggressive threat, like almost like fall back. You don't want to get me to drop this book, you know? And then we went up to Monticello and we asked him about it. That's also on videotape as well as audio tape. We asked him about it. Now, some of you, I was told that's on the Elohim. I was told it's on a cassette, a video from Monticello, New York. Am I saying Eatonton? This is before he went down to Eatonton, Georgia. We went up there and said, Dr. York, blah, blah, blah. We had wrote to you and so forth and so on. And he went into this whole kind of spiel and everything. We'll save that, right there. And since you use quotes that apply to Jesus, who you also say is God, and pretend as if they are talking about his imperial, quote, his imperial majesty, end quote, means that you apparently think he is Jesus. So do you mean to tell me that, quote, God, end quote, comes down to earth, or Jesus returns to earth and becomes a lawyer? Where in the world was Haile Selassie the first, the king of kings of Ethiopia, or emperor, as some say, of Ethiopia? Where was he a lawyer? Dr. York is a liar. You see what he says? He says that Haile Selassie is a lawyer. He said right here. He says, and you will see that he was an ordinary lawyer. Okay, so what cases did he who did he defend, like in like a lawsuit or something? What are you talking about? This book is just a bunch of mumbo jumbo. All right, but I guess a lot of people want to believe it. He said, come on where? Come on to Eatonton, Georgia, and get caught up in that fuckery? And then has to get educated by Europeans in order to carry out his divine mission on earth as a savior? He had a French tutor. Rastafari had a French tutor. Okay, and so what? But see, he takes that little point and he tries to exaggerate it. Then he throws in a lie saying that, well, Haile Selassie is a lawyer. But really the truth is Dr. York is a liar. Not in right wisdom. And this whole right wisdom thing and overstanding thing, he also was jacking it from the writings that we sent to him. Because you could tell that before, see, there's a before Malachi Z. York, right? And there's an after Malachi Z. York. Most ones today that talk about their Nawapi or whatever, they are part of the after. See, under the Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi, he didn't speak like this. He didn't write like this. He didn't talk like this. Who is this? All right, this is that guy that is in jail under some molestation charges. Then you had some people say, well, he wasn't found guilty. We seen the video where they're reading him the counts. I guess this is the cognitive dissonance. For those of you who want to remain under the spell of Kingu? Oh my goodness. They said Leviathan. Oh my gosh. And these spook-filled religions of mythology. No, Eatonton, Georgia, and the Dr. Malachi Z. Yorkism, that is spook-filled religions of mythology. And for those of you who want to wish upon a star and look forward, right, to going to some garden beyond the stars, this guy's foolish. He's foolish, right? He's like putting ideas, saying that this is what the people who are talking about Haile Selassie, which is I and I, the Lion of Judah, from back in the 90s, right? Anyway, let's go on. And as for those of you men who don't want to take on the responsibilities as the Elohim, listen, we went up there to confront you on this, and then you back chat and said, well, I'm not talking about you, but we're the one who wrote you, and that was what set you off on this tangent. but want to depend on apparitions and spooks and spirits and spooks and goblins that are to come out of the sky and save you, so that you do not have to take on the responsibilities given to you by your fathers, the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki are not my fathers, nigga. The fuck's wrong? Excuse me. What's wrong with you? As the caretakers of this planet Earth, that's the whole Rastafari message, because that's what we get from our father, not from your father, Hasatan. And the rulers of the same just continue listening to these religious leaders and their logical reasonings. You know, it's almost like us continuing on here, but let's get, okay, here's a good part. He finally says something about Rastafari. Well, he says Rastafarian. Rastafarian who and what? It's Rastafari, nigga. Rastafari. Can you say Rastafari? For this spell to be removed from people, we must first make up our minds to give back religion. So you Hindus can take your religion back. You Christians can take your religion back. You Muslim and Jews can have your religion back. And you Rastafarians can have your religion back. Now notice, you see what he's saying here. Okay, let's go on. It is time for you to link back to your ancestors as written on the walls in the Great Pyramids and written in the Sumerian tablets called the Enuma Elish, the Etana, and the Atrahasis, to name a few. You know what Dr. York was doing at this point? You know what Dr. York was doing at this point right here? There was ones like who's a brother that wrote the Metu, translate the Metu Neter, right? Ra'un Neferamen. That was becoming big back in the mid-90s. In the mid-90s, a lot of our people were getting into like Kemetic and ancient Egyptian teaching. He was trying to capitalize on that, right? Monetize and capitalize on that. That's what part of this was about. You know what I mean? They said, oh, follow what? Follow the money. Follow the money, right? Let's get out of this right here, because as you can see, we have a few of these things right here, right, to get into. That's the page that we was at before when we started out, because some of the pages were a little out of order, but now here we're getting back into the good order, so forth and so on. And it's interesting because he defends LOJS, right? And LOJS was trying to Mohammedize. He was trying to Mohammedize, right? He was trying to Mohammedize Ethiopia. Right, you know, yeah, and then we could go through this, you know, page by page, but there's some real critical flaws, right? There's some critical flaws. Okay, here when he says like Haile, he said Haile is not in the Hebrew, but the word Chayil, the same letters, the word Chayil is Hebrew. The word Chayil is in the Hebrew. So this kind of let us know that he really doesn't know what he claims to know, right? Let's go through this right here. You know, he says, well, if Haile descended from the tribe of Israel, shouldn't his name or the name of his forefathers be in the Bible? He says, yes, however, it is not. This is how you know that the story of Haile Selassie's life was made up by some poor, disillusioned Negroes who want to be important. Really? You hear what he says right here? Who want to be important. See, he was threatened by what we had shared with him. We didn't even recognize it at that time. You know what I mean? You know, you might look to someone and think like, hey, this could be our brother in arms, but they see you and you're everything they want to be. Right? But it takes you a while to really recognize that. Let's go on right here. Right? Let's go on right here. He says something about Haile Selassie's name. Okay, he says, answer. He says the name Ras can be found, but it's Rosh. But let's find the part where he says the name Haile. He says the name Haile, there's a part where he says the name Haile is not Hebrew. Now he goes into this Enuma Elish kind of a thing right here. Right, let's go through this. Now, as we said, we was going to get into this in its own reasoning. We don't want to rush through it. But we're going to show some things right here, just some overview right here. Okay, let's go right here. Let's go right here. Then you go to Esau and Jacob, right? And kind of God. Let's go through this right here. Okay, nowhere in Arabic, okay, Hebrew or English do you find the word, or English is the word locks defined as dreadlocks. So now he's just getting into a little silly nuance. Nowhere it says that somebody who says they're Islamic can just overnight throw it off, and we don't think that he's a fraud. You know, all this time he was going as one thing, and then because he got scared because of some Islamic fundamentalism. You know, what's that guy, that Bin Laden guy? You know, and his thing was rising. So then he takes them out of the jalabiyah, right, the Islamic garments, and he puts them in what? He puts them in who? He puts them in cowboy uniform, right? A claim of the Rastafarians of the name dreadlocks does not mean that the hairstyle itself is dreaded. It does not mean that the hairstyle itself is dreaded. It means it is a hairstyle that symbolizes dread felt by the Caucasian race, or the fear they have for the dreaded Rastaman or dreadman. What about those Rastafarians who call themselves Nazarenes? There's a group of Rastafarians who think they are Nazarene. Let me tell you right now that they are not. The Nazarenes were dedicated to the service of the Most High. In no way can the Nazarenes be compared to the present day groups who do not cut their hair. The Nazarene follow such laws like abstaining. There are two groups. He goes over here. There are two groups of Rastafarian. One group is known for the amount of marijuana, also called ganja or reefer, that they smoke. The other group, who are considered the real Rastafarians, live in the mountain, practice a pure way of life. They refer to these who sell drugs and smoke marijuana and hashish as rascals. The Rastafarians use Ezekiel 44 and 20 to justify the wearing their dreadlocks. And I quote, "Neither shall they shave their heads nor suffer their locks to grow long. They shall only poll their heads." Right? And then he goes on right here. Let's go to this page right here. Keeping the excess hair growth neat and intact, and then he goes into rah 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 rah, so forth and so on. He said the original Hebrews do not hold Hebraic Christian ceremonies. The original Hebrews do not and never have believed in Jesus Christ as the Messiah. Really? He doesn't know what he's talking about there. He really doesn't know. Because we know Christ is the Messiah. It says so in the Bible. It says that Christ being interpreted to Christ, Christ being interpreted. We found the Messiah, which is being interpreted Christ, right? Yeshua. So therefore, the original Christians were Jews, right? So all this kind of Hebreo-Christian, I know we get this Christian idea since it's basically coming from Messiah. So they are ones who believe in the Messiah. The first followers of the Messiah were Jews or Yehudi, right? We, the black Jews, period. Then he goes into Haile Selassie never named the original Coptic cross. There was a page here, right? Power of the Trinity, Triad, and he gets into all his funky reasonings there. But there was that page where he says, let's see, over here. Okay, here we go. Just to prove that this book was written about us. And since we're on the subject of holding your own, there's a group from Brooklyn, New York, who call themselves the Ark, the Lion of Judah, that has been added to our list of slanderers and liars because we started to call you out. So we was calling out Dr. York as soon as we saw him flip-flop from the Imam Isa and the Islamic thing, right? Because their doctrine has no foundation, no facts whatsoever. This sect has published a couple of flyers trying to defame and discredit the Lamb, right? So here is really, so what we have in this book is some of his followers. In this document is Haile Selassie Christ. We can tell that this is not really even Dr. York so much, right? It's the followers. Here, read it. To discredit the Lamb, as so many have tried to do in the past, but to no avail. The lamb where? The lamb where? The lamb that went to the slaughter? And we're not talking about the lamb Yeshua. We're talking about the lying lamb, right? Who try to run on the lam from Monticello down to Eatonton, Georgia, right? And your sin shall find you out, because the ark cannot find any fault in the knowledge and facts that have been put forth by the Lamb. Yes, we have. Like so many other groups that have not been able to in the past, they have resorted to petty name calling. That's what he's calling it. That's what he's doing here with Haile Selassie, of not only the Lamb and his followers, but also the children of, right, the children of the community. How childish can you get? Well, ask Dr. York how much child abuse can you get? Right? There's only one thing left to say, and that is attack the doctrine. That's why he wrote this book. See, after all these pages, we finally get to why he wrote this book. That he has put forward, and he will meet you on that level, because he has told you. See how it's now written in a kind of a third person sense, right? Not the first person sense. Has told you before, son, you are out of your league. You're not my father, and I'm not your son. Then you say that the white man is the devil, and that he fears the dreaded Rasta man. Well, guess what? Your God was at the funeral of President Kennedy, the devil, as you call him. Really? So we don't come to praise Caesar. You never heard? We don't come to praise Caesar. We don't come to praise Caesar. We come to bury Caesar. Right? I myself have a personal interest in the travesties of Haile Selassie, because he was a traitor. Now, hear what Dr. York and his people are saying. He betrayed my father. So you see how he went from the third person to the first person right here on this page right here on page 69. That's a flip right there. You see the 6 and the 9. He betrayed my father. Who's your father? It was because of his betrayal that my father, As-Said al-Hadi Abdur Rahman al-Mahdi, is now dead. Now this is the real story. So here on page 69 of is Haile Selassie the Christ, Dr. York, Malachi Z. York, Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi, he says it himself. He says he has a personal interest in the travesty. So let's check this out. Let's be very clear on this. Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi of the Ansarullah community, the Nubian Islamic Hebrews over there, formerly located in Bushwick, from about like 1970 to roughly around like 1992 or 93, roughly around that time, right? How many times in his book he talked about the Rasta and also the Rasta? How many times he put Haile Selassie on the Proud Nubians poster? He put Haile Selassie in the very center of it. One day I'm coming home from school, some of their brothers out there with the white robes selling the incense and the oils, had some books there. I saw the poster there, and I saw Haile Selassie right there on his poster with some other black or Nubian leaders. Haile Selassie right there in the center of the poster. If I recall the poster correctly, he was right there in the center of the poster. Not just one poster, but as many posters you see Haile Selassie. Notice, during the Imam Isa al-Hadi days, he didn't mention a lick against Haile Selassie. He didn't mention a lick against Rastafari or Rastafarians. But then, when he becomes Malachi Z. York, notice this. Notice the schizophrenia. Here, this book is written by, allegedly, Malachi Z. York, and then he says, I myself have a personal interest in the travesties of Haile Selassie because he was a traitor. So why in the world are you going to put a traitor, as you say, on your Proud Nubians poster, Dr. York? Or should we say Imam Isa? Which persona are you in today? Who am I speaking to? Am I speaking to, who am I speaking to? I'm speaking to Poltergeist. Who am I speaking to? Legion. He goes on to say, he betrayed my father. So Dr. York / Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi is saying that Haile Selassie betrayed your father? And then you say Haile Selassie was a traitor? Okay. A traitor. Who was your father? He said his father was Asaid al-Hadi Abdur Rahman al-Mahdi. Never heard of him until you saw it. He's now dead. Okay. Now he says, no, now this is the real story. Well, let's get to the real story. Right? Let's get to the real story. After all efforts, look right here. After all efforts, this is Dr. York's real beef. But Dr. York, you ruined yourself, man. We try to let you know. But you see where he calls out the ark. He says the ark, the Lion of Judah, right? That's I and I, that's us, right? After all efforts to keep peace in the Sudan between the Ansars and the opposing party, which consisted of the Khatmiya, the communists and the Egyptians had failed. As Asaid al-Hadi Abdur Rahman al-Mahdi had decided to leave the country for Ethiopia. Why he gonna go to Ethiopia? Why don't he go to Mecca? Why don't he go to Mecca? Why don't he come to Ethiopia? Why don't you go to Mecca? You Muslim, why don't you go to Mecca? He says he's gonna go to... In the year 1970 AD, he was met with the Ansar leaders outside of Sudan, many of whom had been exiled at Al-Raduk mountain camp, 22 kilometers, 12.4 miles east of the Sea of Al-Kurmuk. Unknown to Asaid al-Hadi Abdul Rahman al-Mahdi, here's what he's saying. He's saying Haile Selassie betrayed the Ansars by making this known to the May regime. Wait, where are you? You're in Ethiopia or you're in Sudan? Did you get permission to come to Ethiopia? What are you doing in Ethiopia? The Sudanese had killed Emperor Johannes of Ethiopia and cut off his head. So who are you talking about betraying who? Betraying what? Your father decided to leave Sudan to go to Ethiopia. What did Haile Selassie have to do with that? Haile Selassie betrayed the Ansars? What relate? Did Haile Selassie and the Ansars have any agreement? As far as we are concerned, I'll say we are concerned, there was no treaty of peace between us. Where is that? See, when you say somebody's a traitor, right? If I say this brother's a traitor, that means this brother was down with us. If me and this brother were always at odds and my people and his people are always at odds, you understand? Then there's no betrayal here. You coming into creeping over the borders in Ethiopia, in other words, his story is just that, a big story. The Sudanese are already having their civil war. And the Sudanese government or whoever they're fighting against, the communists or the Egyptians or whoever, caught up with them. But because it seems they died or were caught up with in Ethiopia, therefore they blame Haile Selassie for it. You know, blame Haile Selassie first. Go ahead, blame Haile. No, you should blame your father. Blame the Muslims. Blame the ones who killed him for that. Calling him a betrayer and whatever. There is no fellowship between I and I. We try to say, hey, bro, let's work together. Because you're Sudan and we're representing the Israelites of Ethiopia. Let's work together. And look what he did. He betrayed us and wrote this book. He betrayed us and slandered Haile Selassie in this book. Let's go on what he says. An agreement had been reached between him and Haile Selassie to allow the Ansars to secretly immigrate to Ethiopia. Prove it. Prove that there was some agreement. See, before we're going to even entertain the lies of Dr. York or Imaam Isa or whoever he might be calling himself today, you got to present some receipts. It's a nice story, right? And perhaps we need to continue to investigate this story, right? And to maintain training camps on the border. On the border? You mean right on the border? Like when you're on the border, you can like run across the border and then you can run to the other side. You know, like you can cross the line. Like the Israelites, ISUPK said to Brother Polite, cross the line. Or shut up, get out of here, cross the line. So you're right on the border. The border. But Haile Selassie betrayed the Ansars. Prove it. You're a liar. Are you an Ansar? Notice he repudiated the whole thing from the Imam Isa days. He went against everything he was teaching by getting into all this Egyptology and all this other kind of kooky stuff, and then making him like the God of everything. He made himself like the God of everything. When people question him being the God of everything, he has the audacity to question anybody who actually was really anointed by his people, right? Was really chosen, right, by God. He's trying to make himself God. What Dr. York is saying is that he doesn't choose Haile Selassie because he makes himself, Dr. York make himself out to be a God. So this is what it means when he says, well, he's not the elect of God. How can he be God or elect of God? Because Dr. York believed he was a God. You see the cray-cray? He informed the British government, this is what Dr. York says, who worked with the Americans and the Anglo-Egyptians and who had always had a pact with of this plan, who always had a pact with, and who he had always had a pact with of this plan on the way to the border. On the way to the border. So he's coming from Sudan to the Ethiopian border, or he's coming from Ethiopia to the Sudanese border. He doesn't make that clear. On March 31st, 1970 AD, a police force surrounded Said al-Hadi Abdur Rahman al-Mahdi and his companions. Was it an Ethiopian police force, a Sudanese police force, Interpol police force? Whose police force? Right? Saifuddin, Anaji, and Muhammad Ahmed Mustafa. Let's just get this part right here. Then he goes over here. He says right here, he says, Said al-Hadi Abdur Rahman al-Mahdi was shot in his right leg. Was shot where? In his right leg. And his two other companions were assassinated. Can you tell us where they were shot? Were they shot all over? And their bodies were buried in Aldon Valley near Bawu in Ingasana Mountain. Okay. My father was then taken to jail by the police. Haile. See, you're too disrespectful, Dr. York. You want to give us that all long-ass name, Said al-Hadi Abdur Rahman al-Mahdi, and you can't even say Haile Selassie, but you want to say Haile? You're too disrespectful. Right? But anyway, he says that Haile was informed that he was in jail, and there is where your God, Haile Selassie, had ordered my father's death. Really? Let's read on. He had been shot repeatedly in the back of his head. His body was later taken to the same place where they buried my father's other two companions. So you're saying that he was shot in his right leg, then they took him to jail, then according to you, Haile, maybe it was some other Haile. Maybe it wasn't Haile Selassie, you know what I mean? Maybe it was another Haile, somebody, right? But he's saying, he's implying Haile Selassie, they ordered that Dr. York's father to be shot in the back of the head and then his body taken where the other two companions were assassinated. Wouldn't it make easier sense just to shoot all of them right there? Then he says this in bold type. Dr. York says, this is a fact that Ethiopians tried to hide. So it's Ethiopians now. So why the uck you even use Ethiopian on any of your stuff? He tried to pimp the name Ethiopia. If y'all remember when he was going between Monticello and Eatonton, Georgia. But he's saying here, this is a fact. See, when a liar is lying and we ask for the evidence, they say, hey, this is a fact, but the Ethiopians are trying to hide it. So you bring forth some facts, Dr. York. Because we read this and we said, well, this happened? Then as we went through it, all he's doing is just talking. It's all rhetoric. Then he goes on in the next paragraph to say, so I'm not the least concerned with this dead God. You mean your father? Because Jana dead. Chaya. Jana dead. The only one that's dead in this story, you said, is your father, Dr. York. We've had enough dead Jesuses. You see what he says? Matthew 24:5. But I think he said Jesus was really Tammuz, right? And Tammuz is really Sanander, in the galactic thing. This is some fuckery, people, right? We don't need another false Messiah like Dr. York. He's a false Messiah or fake savior like Dr. York, of whom you can't find one verse or one word of spiritual, economical uplift that he has given to help anybody on the planet except his immediate family. You mean like, did you even help your immediate family, Dr. York? Your daughter was on Moorish World TV crying about like they take Brother Polite taking everything from her, and your daughter running around trying to survive, and you can't even take care of your daughter. Your daughter is saying that sometime in the community, the Nuwaubian community, they didn't even have enough food to eat, that Dr. York had to take his daughter to a restaurant so she would have enough food to eat. She just testified on Moorish World TV about this. And you're talking about somebody uplifting somebody, helping somebody? Where are his books? Whose books? You talking about His Majesty's books? His Majesty has a lot of books, but they're in Amharic. Maybe you can't read them. Oh, Dr. York does some stunting in this book right here. It's Haile Selassie Christ. He does some stunting, right? In this thing that he does, I'm going to show it to you before. It's a little bit longer than we expected, but let's just push through. He asks, where are Haile Selassie's book? You're a fool, man. You a straight fool. And also it appears to be a predator, a child molester. You know what I mean? Which is far worse than just a fool is bad, being a fool. But a child molester, that's a death sentence. Show what he did with his 83 years on the planet Earth. Who are you talking about? Ask his son, who is organizing his own group. In fact, wouldn't he be the son of God if his father was God? Wouldn't your son who betrayed you, Dr. York, and you call yourself a God, wouldn't your son be the son of God since, Dr. York, you called yourself a God? Your own son, let's not even go there. I mean, because they said Dr. York have over 120-something children and everything, and everybody is like trying to find out where's their piece. It's like other people came in and took things. So here's his father. Here's his father right here, who he claims Haile Selassie killed or had killed. Anyway, to the Rastafarian, Haile Selassie's crowning as the Emperor of Ethiopia was symbolic of the day of repatriation. No, it doesn't. It's not their repatriation. Reverend James Morris Webb said, look to Africa where a black man will be crowned king. In him you'll find the Redeemer. Marcus Garvey then took that and he said, look to the east, right? Concerning a black man being king, the day of redemption is near. It's on redemption. It begins for aura, but it's not the same word. Redemption and repatriation are similar only in the fact that they both begin with the letter R. But then he goes to this now to explain repatriate. Repatriate, to return to the country of one's birth or citizenship. They say a true Rasta really wants to go back to Africa and create a universal brotherhood for all Nubians. No, we don't say for all Nubians. We say either for all Africans or for all Ethiopians in that sense, for all. And you're going to say, oh, Nubians is your thing, Dr. York, when you was Imam Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi. Maybe that's a Nuwaubian thing. Nuwaubian, just based on Nubian thing under another disguise. The very reason they call Haile Selassie the prophesied savior is because of the statement Marcus Garvey made concerning the crowning of a black king. Although Marcus Garvey was not referring to Haile Selassie, the Rastafarian. See what he's saying right here? He's saying that Marcus Garvey was not referring to Haile Selassie. Even though later on Marcus Garvey, like John the Baptist, would lose his head. Remember how John the Baptist pointed that Yeshua or Jesus was a savior? Then when John the Baptist was in jail, remember John the Baptist in jail? He got a little bummy in jail. He said, are you the one we look for? Do we look for another? You know what I mean? So when when John the Baptist says, "Behold the Lamb of God to take away the sins of the world," was he referring to Jesus? According to the Bible, he was referring to Jesus. But later on, when John the Baptist was in jail, he got frustrated and he said, "Are you the one we look for, or do we look for another?" Right? Because he expected that Jesus Christ was going to break him out of jail. But because Jesus Christ didn't break him out of jail, he turned salty. That's the same thing basically that happened to Marcus Garvey. Because you could get into that right there. But he's saying Rastafarian mistakenly accept Haile Selassie as a leader because of the timing of his coronation. This nigga, Dr. York, he goes through all of this stuff in his works about timing of things, and this is what proves that he is the Lamb and the Mahdi and the this and the that and the next thing and the Pharaoh and the other that guy, and he's that guy, he's everybody. He's every leader. Dr. York claims you know the song, "I'm Every Woman," that tune, Dr. York claims he's every leader. And then he says, well, the Rastafarians are mistaken because of the timing. The timing was because of the timing of his coronation. And his titles, such as Conquering Lion, Tribe of Judah, Conquering Lion of Judah, King of Kings, Elect of God, etc. They also consider Marcus Garvey to be their founding father and second to Haile Selassie. I don't know about second, but yeah, there are some Rastas that might look at it that way. This same group, now he's talking about us again. Now he's talking about the Lion of Judah, and the Ark stood for the apostles of Rastafari knowledge, right? Here he said the same group, the Ark, say that Haile Selassie is King of Kings. No, Negusa Negesa Ethiopia, his title on all of his books, you know Haile Selassie's book, he tried to be funny. Where's his books? You know, Dr. York claimed, I've written 5 million books, or whatever the number is. No, really, you should give credit to all those women, right? All those women in your movement, right, that assisted you. And you just put your name on it. But anyway, in Revelation 17:14 and Revelation 19:16. First, let me address Revelation 17:14. Okay, he's going to go into his address. I don't want to get his pseudo sign. He goes into so much more right here. We've already, okay, let us show this right here. Okay, then he said, does this sound like any conquering lion to me? He can't even save his own country. Well, let's look at what Dr. York has called himself, and what has he done? He did save his country. How can he save the world? See, and so when he does this with Haile Selassie, he done this with other black leaders, other ones, he tries to so-called proverbial kick ones when they're down. Now when Dr. York is down with I don't know, I forget the number of molestation charges. You say, oh, they're kicking Dr. York when he's down. No, he's a pedophile. And he admitted it. Where was all these powers he had when he's there, admitting on the video? We seen the video, we play back the video, we hear these cats and these clowns saying, he was never convicted, because you see the law, and they're going all into the white man's law and trying, but your nigga leader is still in jail. It's been more than 5 years. So again, this quote, he says, is not about Haile Selassie because he lost the war in Ethiopia. No, he didn't, you liars. How many lies have we caught this Dr. York in this book already? He lost the war in Ethiopia? No. The Italians barely held one city, Addis Ababa. Right? And things were getting too hot for them then. Right? But then he says, and fell into the hands of the enemy. He didn't fall, and he wasn't in the hands of the enemy, you liar. No kings has he yielded. Really? Your father wasn't a king? You want us to go there, Dr. York? You claim he killed your father. We don't really believe your lies, but let's just say he did. You said no kings has he yielded? This guy is a clown, man. Dr. York is a clown, man. You can call yourself a king if you want. A king of a P.O., a post office box in Brooklyn, New York. This is where he was trying to clown us because we had a post office box. Nigga, He been using post office boxes too, right? Now you probably have a post box in jail. What you talking about, nigga? You should be ruling where the Ark of the Covenant is, and it's not in Brooklyn, New York. How do you know? He says, I know, I live there. So you know that the Ark of the Covenant was not in Brooklyn. See, this guy's a clown, man. Right? Now to address Revelation is so you see he's basically, I don't know if it's him or it's one of his people. He even goes into name Adonai, right? Because that's also part of our name right there. Adonias. Adonias, right? You see what it says right there? Adonias. Okay, right translation of the Greek, right? I'm wondering why he. Okay, I'm not gonna even get into that because some of it's just too filthy to even think about. How dare he even open his filthy mouth and got caught up in this kind of shite? Think about it. Oh, it's the white man doing it. Really? His own son, doctor. You want to talk? But remember, he was talking this fly shit before his own son betrayed him. Well, I don't know if his son, quote, betrayed him or his son exposed him. I'm not too sure which one it is. You know what I mean? The good is Hark or whatever in scripture. He says in any of these languages written on his costume, he says you can't do it because this quote is. He's saying that when it says King of Kings and Lord of Lords is written on his vesture. And he is saying, Dr. York is saying that King of Kings and Lord of Lords is not written on his majesty's clothing, garment, or coronation vestures. We're going to prove that also is a lie. Stay tuned, right? You call him, H-I-M, the elect of Yah. Then he goes into another verse right here, right? Okay, let's look at this verse he goes into right here, right? And he quotes this verse from Isaiah 42:1. Here is my slave or servant, whom I uphold, my elect, who the Almighty is saying of his servant, in whom my spirit delight. I have gave my soul. I have given, nigga. Even his Hebrew is whack. Right? He's trying to be heavy, but it fall flat. I have given, I have gave, I have gave, I have gave. It's not I have gave. Right? He can just put given, right? Given, I have given. And let's see, is this even correct? Yeah, his transliteration is not. It falls short. Anyway, I have given my soul. Right? I have given my soul upon him. He will bring forth judgment to the Goyi, the Gentile nation. Now he's going to say, well, Haile Selassie never did that. Well, he must not know that word that he spoke. In the scripture it says that the Messiah, God's Messiah, God's King, he will destroy with the word of his mouth. Haile Selassie said that today the match has been struck in Ethiopia, the fire will burn Europe. They laughed at him, right, when he said that. They shrugged it off. Within a couple of years, it wasn't even a year, right after that, almost like a year, maybe 2 or 3 or so, the war raged through Europe. And many even then said we should have listened to Haile Selassie because all the Christian kings in Europe, because they used to be like Christian kings in Europe, all of them fell off. And the only one that remained on the throne was the one that finally gave assistance as they were supposed to from the very beginning. And that is speaking about Britain. So when he talked about bringing forth judgment, Haile Selassie did bring forth judgment upon those European nations. Maybe he's talking to people nowadays who don't even, know the last 50 years of history. They don't even know what happened last year. They don't even know what's happening this year, much less what happened last year. You can fool them with that. Then he goes into this right here. We just wanted to touch on that, so forth and so on. Right? Let's get to this right here. He went against everybody and he said he's the one, right? And then we see him getting caught up on the whole role of child molestation shite. We should still join up with him, right? He says if Ge'ez is a dialect of Amharic, just like you said, show me somebody named Ge'ez in the scripture. He's stupid as uck, man. Really? If see, he has as geese, it's gutters. It's gutters. It's not G. There's no H in it. There's no H in it. It's gutters. There's no H in it. If gutters is a dialect of Amharic, no. Amharic comes from gutters. He has it all mixed up. He has it all mixed up. Let's show how bad. See, Dr. York, you should have stayed in your bleeping lane, right? He says here, because he's really writing to I and the Lion of Judah. He says, you misuse which I note. You misuse which I know. You don't attempt to translate from what you're calling Amharic or geese. It's not geese, it's gutters. 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 It's gutters, nigga. Can you say that? I think Dr. York can, but I don't know if some of his followers can. And by the way, which of the many dialects of the Ethiopian language and script do you speak fluently? He must have thought that he was talking to like Nation of Islam or one of the Hebrew Israelites. I don't know who he thought he was talking to. And to which universities or institutions do you have certificates to prove it? Nigga, if you speak a language fluently, all you have to do is speak the language fluently. You don't need to have an institution. People learn the language, a mother tongue. You learn it from your mother, or you learn it, you learn it as like one may learn it in a like a priesthood. Like when you initiate into the scrolls, as it were. But he says, which universities or institutions do you have certificates to prove it? Okay, let's go right here, because Dr. York got a lot of certificates. Here he shows Amharic, a vernacular of 3 million people in Ethiopia, right? Amharic, right? I don't know, and what do you have right here? This is a quote from the Bible. Manem kawichana Kamenfes kal tawallada what Xavier Mengista Yigabazen Aichilim. In other words, almost like except one is born, of water and spirit, one cannot enter into the kingdom of God. That's what that phrase right there that he quotes. Manem ka wahana kamenfes kal tawallada what Xavier Mengista Yigabazen Aichilim. Now I need to show you a certificate? Nigga. Then he says Bogos. Now here's Bogos. Right? Bogos right here. Right? What's this? Dodge. We don't really speak Bogos, but it's written in Amharic, so it does make it a little bit easier to learn it. Right? Jad. If that's Jad. To see. It's a little bit not really clear. Isahi, ni yedan gin, ye shanecher, ye ganacher. Okay, boom, Bogos. Okay, Bogos spoke about 20,000 people in Ethiopia, also written in Amharic character. All right? I think he was just trying to find out. He was asking questions. Now here, look at this. Thirdly, we're on page 84. Ethiopic. The ancient language of Ethiopian. Can you just put a the there or say of Ethiopia? Is written in Ethiopic characters. The Ethiopic alphabet of syllabary. It sounds stupid the way, I don't know who wrote this. The Ethiopic alphabet is a syllabary developed gradually, it is said, from Semitic writings. I just add that right there because you need somebody to type it. But look at this stupid shit right here. Look at this. This is gutters. This is Dr. York's gutters. Do you see, brothers and sisters? I don't know if some of y'all, if you know people who can speak gutters, this is upside down. In his book is Haile Selassie the Christ. Here he has the gutters upside down. Upside down, you turning me. That's what he did. Dr. York ruined himself, man. He ruined himself, man. I mean, look at this right here. This is upside down. Nobody said, hey, wait, hold on for a moment. This is upside down. He has the gutters, the ancient language, upside down. We're not going to even attempt to read this upside down stuff. All right? This is upside. Then he has Falasha. But I want you to note this right here. The gutters, they call Ethiopic, or that's called Ethiopic, is upside down. I mean, a master scholar like Dr. York doing something like that. We've seen that whenever, like even the old Imam Isa books, we can tell that wasn't his forte. That wasn't his strength. Arabic, Arabiya, Fusa, Quranic, Arabic. Yeah, he was good with that. That was, yeah. That's something that he was fluent in. But this Amharic, Ethiopic, stay in your lane, Dr. York, because he didn't stay in his lane, he swerved and he crashed. Fourthly, Falasha. Falasha or Kara is written in Amharic characters and spoken by some 50,000 people in the Kara district of Ethiopia. Now, we don't know if this is that Yedera? Is that Yedera? Is that a Ye? If that's Yedera, Ye Kalas Shebae Ni Yezen Gen Ye Shin Ye Shinri Ye Shinri Ye Geniri Ye Geniri. We basically can read it. It's not what we usually read. Then he has the Gala. Really, he should put Oromo there. He didn't even know that the Gala, as it's called, that's a pejorative to the people. Now they call it Oromifa, like Oromifa or Orominya, right? Central dialect written in Amharic characters and is spoken in Ethiopia. So here he has, it seems like apart from the Bible, Nemni, Isati Aken, Amenu, was a Hunde, Aka, Hinbane, what's that? Feyuman, Hogum, Hunde, Itatif Mele, Wakayon, Akanate Biya Lefa Afe. Okay, boom. Then the northern dialect, and he has a little quote here. This is really like tiny script right here. Boom. But anyway, Dr. York, you need to look over here. We get to Tigra. Let's look at these errors in his book. Let's look at these errors linguistically. Right? Then he had the audacity to do something and try to name it Ethiopian something. Right? I'm so happy he had to pull up from that because here he has the Gofa. Gofa, 30,000 people in Ethiopia. Right? Ine Yara, Utidaise, what's that? Ushidi. Is that Elidi? Gisa, Hekota, Ione, Ta, Eshene, Sosa, Doside. Something's like bish. It's kind of bish, like blurry. But yeah, if it was much clearer, we can read it, right? Here, he has Gudelia. Notice he has part of it is upside down, part of it is right side up. What kind of games he's playing? Look at this. This is upside down, brothers and sisters. The top part, the first line, it's upside. It's all screwy. Let's go on. Right here. This is right side up. Sidamo, right? Then he goes over here. Look at Tigra. So he disrespects the Gu'ez, has Gu'ez upside down. He has, who else he got upside down? The Godelia is upside down. Right? What else over here is upside down? The Godelia is upside down. The Ethiopic is upside down. And he got Tigrinya upside down. Tigrinya is upside down. Tigra is written in Amharic characters. It's not really Amharic characters. The characters are really Ethiopic characters. Anyway, is spoken by tribes living along the Red Sea inland toward Kassala in Eritrea, northeast Africa. But he has the language upside down. Right? Tigra and Tigrinya are not. Here's the Tigra, right? The Tigra is upside down. Here's Tigrinya. Right? It's small as Ak right there, but then he says right here, he says, Haile Selassie was born in Harar. No, Haile Selassie was not born. Tafari, the man-child, as in LOJS Tafari, and better known as Rastafari, was born in Harar, Ethiopia, which is in the northeastern part of Ethiopia. The dialect that is spoken according to the list above is Gala, the northern dialect. You can get any newspaper clipping from Ethiopia and listen to him talking. If you understand the language, and you will find that this is true. His native dialect was the Gala dialect, yeah. Or really, see, Gala today, among a lot of the Oromos, they find that to be, for their own geopolitical reasons, to be a pejorative. They prefer to call it Oromo or Oromifa. Yes, his mother, right, was of that people, the Gala or the Oromo. Amharic is the original script, Gala, of which Haile Selassie spoke, was just a dialect, and all the other dialects in, what's he talking about, in Ethiopia are borrowed from the Amharic script. Your God spoke Gala. God has to borrow the Amharic script because his dialect does not have it. He sounds like a stupid uck, man. He's talking nonsense. If just based on what I showed you, here in his book, there is 3 or 4 places where he doesn't have the good sense to know which way the script is written. He has it upside down. He has it up. He had the Gu'ez upside down, the Ethiopic upside down, the Tigre upside down, the Gudelia upside down. Now he's trying to make this point that, he spoke Gala. No, Amharic has Oromo, or before called Gala, words. It's an Afro-Semitic language. It's a Hamo-Semitic language. So some of the words from Oromifa, the Oromo, is Hamitic, is Hamitic. This is why the language is called Afro-Semitic. You see what I'm saying? The Semitic part of Amharic is coming from Gu'ez. So all of the script is coming from the Gu'ez, is the ancient script. So you're talking about God has to borrow a dialect. You sound stupid, right? But even worse than stupid, we know you're a child molester. I mean, I don't know which one is worse right there. I think child molester is worse. So now I know, right? Then he goes into this right here, right? He doesn't even recognize, Dr. York doesn't even recognize, right here it says, there are some who try to take the name Haile, or conveniently Haile, and connect it with the Aramic Hebrew. Hebrew and Aramic is not the same thing. Anyway, let's just go on. El and the Syriac Arabic Il. They try to say that all these words have the same meaning. Yes, we said that. He says that is wrong. First of all, Il, no. See, the Syriac Il, oh man, that begins with an Ain. The L begins with an Aleph. He goes on, which is the ending and all the... See, when he goes to the Arabic ending is different. Is different than the Hebrew. I just have to point that out. We already been on this for a moment right here. And he kind of understands that one is L. No, we're going to show you right here. Let's just show you right here. Let's come out of this for a moment right here. What page? Could we have a few more pages on this? Then he goes into some other, some other ramblings, right? Some other ramblings. Let's go right here. Let's just show this right here. Okay, we're going to show you Haile in the Bible, because some of the Hebrew Israelites say the same thing. They say, well, it's not even Hebrew, it's not found in the Bible, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, do you really even know the Bible? I mean, have you really studied the Bible? Or you just found out yesterday you said Hebrew, and now you run around telling people who have been studying this and growing this. You see the name Ben Haile? You see the name Ben Haile, Second Chronicles 17 and 7. Boom, right? You see Ben Haile. You see the second word Haile. right? Ben Haile. This is the name, the first part of the name Haile Selassie. There it goes right there, right? Let's bring this out even more, right? Right, a ruler under Jehoshaphat, right? You see the name right there? Son of might. What's the definition of Haile Selassie, the basic definition in English? Might or power of the Trinity. Ben Haile. Who is Ben Haile? Ben Hale, Ben Haley, Ben Haley. You could say Ben Haley, but really then you would have to have another. Like, as he is Haile Selassie first, I am Ben Haile, right? Ben Haile Selassie, right? Ben Haile, Ben Haile, right there. Haile, you see? Haile. You see in the Hebrew right there? Haile. You see? Haile. You know, because a lot of them want to say is strength, might, efficiency, wealth, army, Haile. You see Haile? They say probably force, power, might or power of the Trinity. You see Haile? Here it going down to Hul. Right? Here's taking it to a different root right here. Right? A different root right here. Right? But here's the root that we're going to right here. Right? Because the other one right there, what part of speech? Oh, that's the verb. Right? But here as a noun. Right? Haile. Haile. That is Haile in Haile Selassie. So here, and this is one area I knew I could go here really quick from the English to both show you the Hail. They say Hail Selassie. You know, like one fool out there said, Hail Hitler. Sound a lot like Hail Selassie. He's a fool and he claims to be a Hebrew Israelite. Obviously, he don't know this right here. So you see Ben Haile, right? Like Haile Selassie. I, Ben Haile Selassie, son of the might and the power of the Trinity. Just want to show you this right here so you can find this right here. This is one proof. There's more proofs we got to show, but this is one here. So when you hear them say, Haile is not even in Hebrew, right? Next they'll try to say, well, Selassie is not even in Hebrew. We can show you that as well, but we'll save that for next time. Right here, this was just supposed to be a part of this right here about how Dr. York, right? Dr. York ruined himself, right? With his sex secrets and lies, right? This sister here is testifying despite being raped and abused by Nubian cult leader Dwight York, Nikki Lopez found the strength to expose him to the FBI. Where was the extraterrestrials to come from Ritz, the man from Ritz Cracker? You know, how did the man from Ritz Cracker get away from that, right? She had to go to the FBI. Where was his special powers, calling down lights and stars and everything, right? Rastafari is a culture. The difference between Dr. York's cult. Rastafari is a culture with deep, deep roots. We don't have to wait for one man to come along and make it up. And His Majesty didn't have to come along and make anything up. All he had to do was show up, represent, and do his work. Now it's for us to do the rest. Anyway, brothers and sisters, we're going to rest on this right here for a moment. You know, come out of her. Come out of Egypt. Right? The Yamasi children. They say, where's the abuse? Well, a lot of people are talking about abuse. Maybe they spoke too soon, right? When he was in his Imam Isa phase, maybe this always was in him since he was going around doing other stuff then, but at least from what we witnessed, he was in a consistent teaching. Then he went and repudiated everything that he had said, that if he does that, you would know something is wrong. And now we even know even more so something is real wrong. Dr. Malachi Z. York, he ruined himself. And ones who don't recognize that and try and defend it, they are ruining a lot of people. Come out of it before it's too late.